Wednesday, September 18th, 2024. First item of business is roll call.
Commissioner Tucker.
Here.
Commissioner Sager,
Here.
Commissioner Stahl,
Here.
Chair Wheeler,
Here.
and then Commissioner Hartwig is absent. And Commissioner Carpenter is absent and Commissioner Perkins is absent.
Okay. Looks like we got a quorum, so we can go ahead and move on with some of our business. Our first item is the approval of the August 21st, 2024 meeting minutes.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? We got a second. Any discussion needed on this? No discussion. So all those in favor of approval of the meeting minutes, please raise your right hand. Perfect. Motion carries. We got item number 4 already, commission business. And we have items A, B, and C, solar farms, water management plan, and code, or park code amendment update. So you just want to go right down the list?
Yep.
As they're listed?
Yep.
First up, we have solar farms.
Yes, so in your packet, you should have an email from Sarah Poet, the fire marshal, kind of just requesting that the city consider implementing code related to solar farms. They've had some fire-related issues and kind of just wanted to bring that up to the city, and we want to get your thoughts on it and if it's something the city should look into. And then also included is some code from the fire marshal. Talks about some statistics and actual code sections related to solar farms.
I think it's appropriate to have Sarah Poet up. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Sarah, if you'd like to come to the mic and kind of give us a little background on what we should be looking at and why we're looking at it. And introduce yourself, of course.
Thank you for having me. My name's Sarah Poet. I am the fire marshal with Estacada Rural Fire District across the street. I have 31 years in the fire service, and last year we had a fire up on the solar farm up off Day Hill Road, and I was the incident commander on that fire. One thing that I learned with that in running that fire is that those solar farms are managed and owned typically from companies outside the state. They are leased for about 25 years is their lifespan typically. And they are not obviously managed locally, and they don't have a shut off. They are not able to have a disconnect where you can shut those off. So they are live when we're fighting the fire, and there's no way to shut them down. They feed back into PGE's system. So we are able to call PGE, which they can disconnect the back feed from their system, but the solar panels themselves are continuously being fed, right? So they're a high danger to the life safety of my crews when they come in. So there's no way to shut that off. And so the parts that are coming in are, I don't want to say always, right? Because that's not fair, but made in China, the inverters. And in this particular incident, the inverter failed, and I had molten aluminum dripping onto the vegetation in between the rows. Okay. There's code that requires the vegetation be maintained, and that isn't always happening. Okay. They don't want to come in and they don't want to pave around it. They don't want to disc around it. They don't want to put gravel around that because it's leased for 25 years, and then they take it out and it turns back into the landowner, right? So there's not a lot of improvement to prevent wildfire and those kind of things and the risk abatement. So the State Fire Marshal's Office, you can see in their publication provided in your packet, is the gated Y. It was published this month. And on page 13 and 14, the codes, technical codes division put out a segment that talked about solar system fires. They did on page 14, I believe, reference larger solar farms kind of in the middle of the publication that said larger solar farms that are publicly owned are regulated by NFPA 70, Article 691, where additional requirements can be found. I have not gotten into that section. I will tell you that we are in the middle of a adoption cycle for the new Oregon Fire Code, and that will be adopted and in place October of 2025 for the new code cycle. And I am on that committee for that code section. I have purposely put myself on the energy section, code section to address some of these issues, right? But in the meantime, there's no guarantee that my request is going to get put through at the state level. So it was recommended that I ask the City of Estacada Planning Commission if they would look into making a proposal to you guys, making a code request to make it a requirement to have a shutdown for us when we go in there to disconnect the solar farms, so we can go in and fight the fire.
And you're wanting mainly a disconnect from the line power that would be backfeeding into that, correct?
Yeah, just a way that we can just shut that off and provide the safety so it's not a constant source of power. So that if we touch those panels, we're not being electrocuted, basically.
Unfortunately, I don't understand the distribution of it too much, but don't they have circuit breakers or anything like that? They don't have any breakering system in there at all. I see that as a major issue.
Yeah,
Since-
there was no way for me to shut that off up on that hill.
Well, we're a very fire sensitive area, so that would be the minimum I would think we need to do.
Just thinking out loud a little bit here, this isn't something that typically the planning commission has done in the past in my years here. And then my second thought to go along with that is we don't currently have any of these in the city of Estacada, right?
There's one off of Deuce Road. Alan, is that one in the city limits?
No, that's outside of the city and outside of the UGB. So, yeah, but I don't think we have solar, obviously people doing solar on their buildings, but yeah, we don't have anything like a solar farm.
And this wouldn't include anybody's solar on the rooftop because those are,
Right. Yeah, Skylar is doing the plan review on those, and the code's pretty specific on that. We have disconnects on those. Those are all signed. And there's very strict code requirements for those, and we're able to manage those. It's more on the solar farms and if we had any come into the city limits, which I think we have potential.
is Clackamas County doing anything proactive on this? Clackamas Fire and Clackamas County building and planning and all that?
I have not gotten a proposal on anything currently with regard to that. I just know we have the Deuce and then we have the Day Hill one. And then obviously I've put myself on the current code cycle for 2025 to address it.
Okay. So Alan and Evelyn, and maybe Kurt, you can chime in on this too. From a planning commission standpoint, what can we do legally and what would you recommend?
I mean, you could direct staff to look into developing some development code that would address this and require like a breaker system if a solar farm were to go in. I don't know if like Kurt, what do you think of it seems kind of far-fetched that something like that would happen in the city because it's this land inside the city is much more expensive than it is outside the
Yeah,
UGB.
land. So I think that, yeah, and like you mentioned, the city, anything in the city probably comes through a private service, which has got disconnects. But I'm surprised that the state electrical inspector doesn't acknowledge this and that the state codes don't acknowledge this. So I'm not sure there's much you need to do locally, but statewide, they need to address this. So I don't see a solar farm inside the city limits. You know, Boring just put one in, but they're not a municipality. So they're just Clackamas County. So, but it'll let me check the Boring one now that I know this issue. That's interesting.
So moving forward then, I mean, it's definitely an issue. The impact that we can have on it, I don't know how much that directly relates to you guys in the fire department. But maybe we can instruct you guys to work together and
Yeah,
just keep in touch on it. And if there's anything we can do, I don't think anybody would be opposed to it.
No,
I don't want to speak for everybody.
I think you'd have pretty wide support here. Cause I'm all for safety, especially for city employees and stuff like that. Yeah, well, yeah, any of that.
yeah, we can look into it, but I suspect it's gonna be higher up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what the struggle is right now. Even the state fire marshal's office is like struggling to find the answers, and that's why they wrote this piece. So, we're working on the answers from our level at the state level, so.
Okay.
It's kind of, basically, it's new. I mean, the energy systems section in the code just came out this last code cycle,
Hmm.
you know, the 2022. Yeah, it's kind of, you know, with the evolving technology, right? We're playing catch up. And this is one of those things that we're a little bit behind on. So yeah, we're having to catch up on some of this stuff. And I think this is one of those things that we're behind on. So it's definitely important to me because I happen to have one of those fires.
Yeah.
So thank you.
From an access standpoint, you guys are, have access into those
Right.
enclosed areas, right?
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. I mean, for me right now, if I had to do it over again, and it was a little more aggressive than what I had to deal with, I might take a different approach and, you know, maybe put a dozer line on the outside, right? Versus going through the fence and risking what we did.
Mhm.
And taking a more, defensive approach versus an offensive approach.
Sure.
But, that's kind of some pre-planning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think you'd have the support. I just don't know the impact we would have and
Yeah.
maybe running
We
it
can
through
talk
Alan
about
and
it.
the
Yeah, let's
staff
talk
would be
next
the
week.
ticket.
Yeah.
Great.
Cool.
One would think you could put, you could put some of this language in the code somewhere. I mean, you could do it, but I'm not sure. The impact, you're right, is, if you're looking forward into the future, I don't know where solar is going to go because solar is such a new technology and it's going to evolve over time. I don't know, whether or not it's needed right now. I think there's a need for it now. I see it, but
Right.
again, impact is another thing.
Yeah, one of the things I personally don't have access to, but it is referenced in the document that the state put out was the NFPA 70 Article 691 that talks about the larger solar farms, that additional requirements can be found. I think in working with that code committee, I think I'll have access to that. So
Sure.
I'll work with Alan on pulling some of that data and sharing that with him and seeing where that takes us. So maybe he can follow up with you on what we find.
Okay. That sounds great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming today and
Yeah.
thanks for enlightening us on this.
Yeah, thank you guys.
All right.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Next up, we have our water management plan. And we have some special guests today
Excellent.
Boy.
in person.
Place at the table too. Wow, that's pretty cool.
And this is gonna coincide a little bit with the water system master plan update, I imagine, or at least maybe touch on it.
Well, that's what we're here for. So
Okay.
what did you anticipate? I guess the water management plan, did you state? How did you list it on your?
We have the water management plan.
Yeah. At
Yeah.
the last meeting, we talked about how you guys seeing this plan might help you understand what was in the water master plan. So this is just the additional information
Okay.
to help you kind of have background on the water master plan
Yeah.
that you talked about last month.
We have two documents we prepared. First of all, I'm Kurt McLeod with Kern McLeod Engineers. This is Ed Hodges, my partner at Kern McLeod. We've prepared two documents in the last 2 months. One is the water master plan draft that'll go before city council this month. And the other is the water management conservation plan. So I really don't have much input to say on this. This water management conservation plan, we've turned it into OWRD. They've responded with several comments. We're editing this report now to turn in. The master plan pretty much covers everything that we need to think about for our 20-year planning window. The conservation plan talks about how we implement that plan more. So I'm really not, I didn't do a lot of work on the conservation plans, but what questions do you have on the conservation plan, or do you want to go over the master plan?
Why don't you give us the high points and why we're seeing this?
Master plan?
Is it it's a 20-year cycle like most everything in
Yes.
Oregon planning?
Yeah, now OWRD requires this water management conservation plan on a different cycle. This does not have a 20-year cycle, but that's prompted by water rights. So whenever you have water rights issues, they're going to prompt you to update your management conservation plan. We integrated as part of the master plan. When we did the master plan, one of the scopes that we had quantified was to do the conservation plan with it. So these two documents would be bound together when we turn them into OHA for approval. So the high points I can give you on the master plan, I kind of typed them all out for you there, that if you've got questions on any component of that, I think that the real questions come after you conclude what we need to do. You know, we need to come up with money in the next 2 years, I would expect. And I guess I'm here to answer any questions you've got on the master plan, but let me tell you what I foresee as the overview. If you understand the whole plan, is we are essentially out of capacity at the water plant. We're down to our peak days now are maybe 1.1 to 1.2 MGD. The temperatures calmed down, that we're past the peak, I think, for this year. We can produce 1.6 at the water plant. We had triggered a 1.4 was our trigger for rationing water, for curtailment, water curtailment plan that you guys have adopted. So in an overview, I think what needs to happen is we're going to look for ways to minimize losses. We can do that immediately. So we can start that this month. Anything that we can gain in losses, that's the same as adding capacity. So I think the goal is we'll find losses to help us get through the next 2 years. Is what it's going to take, I think, to get a new water plant online. And then that 2-year period, we need to get funding and then modify the plan. So what we're proposing to do is remove the 2 older units that are at the plant and replace them with membrane plants. So a newer tech comparable to the wastewater plant membranes. It's a different style of membrane, but we're also able to get a lot more capacity in a lot smaller footprint. So with the membrane recommendation, we won't need to do any substantial building modifications. We don't need to expand the footprint of the building, which is good. You know, down in that area, it's all rock and we're pushed right up against the bank to get the building that's in there now. So that's a major benefit. We can make these skids as large as we want. We got lots of room. So we had proposed to add 2 MGD in the new membranes, and we'll save 1 MGD of the nominal 2 MGD at the plant now. So we would remove 1 MGD of the nominal design at the plant now, add 2 MGD back in their place. And so we'll end up with 1 MGD of existing capacity and 2 MGD of new membrane capacity.
So you're saying that'll actually be over our capacity draw? How much water we can draw out of it on a.
So the source limitations are a challenge. Yeah, we've got 2.6 MGD. We need 3
Sure.
to buy for 20 years. So we've got lots of options of where we can get water. None of them easy, but we're proposing, I think the thing we're pursuing the most is reclaimed water. So that reclaimed water, to be politically correct, we're calling it, processed water we have already processed. So what that means is it's water that's come through our system, gone to our wastewater plant, it's been treated. And that it's not that gallon, but it's a comparable gallon that we take 3/4 of a mile upstream in the river.
And is it a 1-for-1?
Yes. Yeah. So, and that doesn't require any OWRD permitting. So we just need to get approvals to do that. So they won't give us a water rights certificate for that, but it'll just be reclaimed water per statutes. There's Oregon statutes that address that.
Does storm work on the same way?
No, no. Stormwater, in fact, Escada doesn't have any mandates on stormwater. We've got some mass contaminant levels that we have to hit. We've got a matrix of how we address stormwater, but there's no limitations and there's no treatment requirement yet for Estacada. You're too small.
Is there an offset for putting clean water back in? Like if we can
That's-
quantify it?
If we can quantify it. So I see two sources. Of course, we have a treatment plant that's going to produce high quality effluent, meets drinking water standards, going back into the Clackamas.
Sure.
And we also have a lot of backwash water that we're using now. So if we can reduce that 200,000 gallons we use at the water plant, if we can cut that down to 80,000 gallons, that's 120,000 more source essentially that's available to us. Yeah.
And so the peak day, just so the numbers jive in my head here. The peak day we had this year was 1.4 MGD. And our current production capacity is 1.6.
Right,
So we got a $200,000 buffer there.
Right.
If we're running everything perfectly.
right,
Yeah.
But
right.
then we're putting that $200,000 or 200,000 gallons back in for back flushing.
No, that 1.6 is after backwash.
Oh.
So
Okay.
our treatment plant pumps from the river at about 1.8 is the peak. The treatment plant uses 200 of that. We can pump 1.6 out into the
Okay.
system. Yeah.
Okay.
And also recognize that 1.6 is not only met by the treatment plant producing that peak day, we also have storage reservoirs, and those reservoirs buy us time. So those reservoirs could dampen that peak over a 3-day weekend, for example, to where we conservatively size the water plant to produce a peak day, but we don't need to. When we get pushed, we've got reservoirs that
Sure.
mitigate that peak day.
So, moving forward, when you look at your plan for population and stuff like that, how soon do we run out of, even if we upgrade to this current one, how soon do we run out of water again?
Well, this only says let's get 3 MGD by the year 2045.
Sure.
So of course, if we only get 3 MGD with what we're struggling now, we're going to run out in 20 years. So, but if we can go to Timothy Lake, for example, it's such a minor component of the lake. If we can negotiate something with PGE, that could buy us decades. We'd be in here 40, 50 years perhaps. The number I put in my report there said that if we had 500,000 gallons from Timothy Lake for the whole summer period, that's only 1/4% of their water. And of course, their water is replenished every year. So, I mean, it seemed like something we should work hard to negotiate. So reclaimed water, I think we can get 500,000 gallons of reclaimed water. And Timothy Lake could perhaps also provide water for us. We've looked at wells, we've looked at buying other water rights, we've looked at buying water from adjacent communities.
Sure.
None of those are great options.
You're discussing, like piping water out of Timothy Lake down here, or?
No, we just take it out of Clackamas River, but we'd have them discharge for us. So there's other
Yeah.
communities doing that. We just have to negotiate buying that water. So,
I got it.
mhm.
And so when you say 500,000 gallons, that's or 0.5 MGD,
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
and it would only be on a kind of a as needed basis essentially, or?
Well, yeah, but I think we are as needed, we plan on it all summer. So we would maybe, if we negotiated something, we certainly don't need it in the wintertime. But if we had 180 days at 500,000 gallons a day, that's, 90 million gallons. But compared to the 80,000 cubic feet they have up there, which is about 40,000 million gallons. So 30,000 million gallons. That's a lot of water.
He's gotta go.
30,000 million
There goes the
gallons.
numbers, Beth.
Yeah,
Isn't that a billion?
it could be 30 billion gallons.
Yeah.
That got
So-
my math right.
Ouch.
Yeah. 30,000 million. Actually, I think it's, what'd you say? I think
that's
it's a
a-
trillion. It's 30
Mm,
trillion
Maybe
gallons.
30 billion.
Yeah.
It's
So
billion.
it's a lot of
I think it
water.
is, okay.
A lot.
So although water is gold in Oregon, so
is.
you negotiate whatever you can negotiate. I know that other communities have negotiated with PGE and got that Timothy Lake water. So I think we've got 2 years before we're pushed to that limit. or more. So with something we need to work on. So
And in the meeting, a month ago, we were talking, was the number 27 or 37%?
37.
37%.
Just lost.
Yeah,
And what's reasonable? Because nothing's
15.
100% of 50.
15 is reasonable.
Is reasonable.
15 would be acceptable.
The state sets a guideline at 10%, but that's pretty tough to
Yeah.
obtain.
I don't know a manufacturing operation that can actually do that. I was with Frito-Lay forever. and If we hit 10%, it was a good day.
So we expect that there may be some inaccuracies in the meters. That may be a
Sure.
prime sort thing to look at. We don't see water bubbling out of the ground because when we see that, that gets fixed instantly.
Mhm.
So there may be, and your ground is pretty tight, so leakage would seem like it would come to the surface.
Are we a full metered system?
Oh, yeah, yeah. But some of the old meters maybe are not as quite as accurate, but we're looking for 300,000+ gallons a day. That's a lot of water.
Do jurisdictions ever go in and meter mains to see where the water's flowing?
Not that I'm aware of. They do have, they have meters that they can strap onto pipes when you're trying to quantify where your water's going. Temporary, you just,
Or
excavate the pipe.
we've got another client where the operator's been putting on loss meters. So say they got a big 10-inch main, they put a little 2-inch one and watch and see what it does in the middle of the night. And so they had a bunch of problems with loss. So that sort of thing you can do.
There's several companies that do leak detection. So they could come out, one would be Ecologic, I think is the name of the company out of Canada. And they actually mount permanent transmitters on your fire hydrants. And then remotely, they can say from the noise they can hear that you've got a leak 270 feet from hydrant 60 and 120 feet from hydrant 70. And so they pinpoint this area, say that's where your leak is. Because they hear it and they can tell the distance from where they're hearing it. So those are about $1,000 per hydrant to install, but they're permanently installed. And then you have a cellular a phone service, and it's always communicating with their office, and they're monitoring, telling you where the leaks are. Now, much lower tech than that, we've got 2 other companies that work locally that we'll work with Don DeRosia to actually do this. He's got money budgeted, so we'll start doing leak detection very quick here. And Oregon Associated Water Utilities will provide people to come do it for free for us. So we're starting to talk with them also to say, let's schedule coming out and try to find some leaks.
And when you find the leaks, is it a much more substantial fix than say slip line on a sewer line?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
don't do that. You'd fix the hole or you'd replace the pipe. So I think they just recently worked on the old mill line that went from 6th down to the highway
Mhm.
and found that it was just really deteriorated. So they actually shut the whole line off. So, you wouldn't slip line a water line. You might pipe burst it, but more likely at this shallow, they're all shallow.
Sure.
So you just dig them up and replace them.
You're talking about putting reliner in.
Yeah.
Yeah, reliner them all. Okay.
Yeah.
Sewer lines.
It's probably just more cost effective to dig them up, and
Mhm.
replace them. And you know what you got too.
And so the next couple years, deal with the leakage, and then from there, we gotta get a firm, long-term plan of getting more water effectively.
Well, Pete, I
And-
think you're a little more on that. We need to get building now and.
I think we need to get
Pete
building
be
now.
Doing both now.
Yeah, if we can get those losses down to where we don't hit those 1.4 million gallons a day next summer, that's gonna make everyone more comfortable. But working hard on leaks, so if we could find 200,000 gallons in leaks, that's huge capacity improvement. We're also replacing the media on the filters we're gonna keep at the water plant. So hopefully that helps us get a longer filter run. Right now, they're having to backwash their filters like every 3 or 4 hours. And so they're supposed to backwash, and especially with that clean Clackamas River water, we're mandated to backwash once every 24 hours. But you don't even need to backwash in 24 hours. So there's just not something right here. So putting new media in right now, they've got a contractor on board to put new media in that hopefully will help the newer units 3 and 4.
As far as financing a capital improvement like this, how does that look? Is it something we want to discuss publicly?
Well, it'll be painful, but we need to look
Yeah.
around and see what's available to us. We've got multiple clients that have Business Oregon. I think it seems like the easiest program to work through. So we work with Business Oregon on a revolving loan fund. And their rates, we have one that we're been into it for 3 years now, and it was 1%. We've got one that we've only been into it for a year and a half, and it was 4%. So I expect that it's would come down from the 4% with what I see is happening. I haven't heard today whether they cut the discount rate, but I expect they did.
0.5.
Did they drop it to 0.5
Yeah.
today? So I expect in the next 6 months, all of the interest rates will come back down. So we might be looking at 3%. It depends on, I think Esticate is also what's the term they use for economically disadvantaged community? So I think it opens you up for some different funding options too. So we did look at what a 30-year 1% loan would be, and that was approximately $1.45, I believe, per connection per month for $1 million, So 10 million would be $14 a month. 15 million would be whatever that is, 1.5 times 14. So $21 a month. Which is painful, but it's not the end of the world.
No, not to have clean water available to you.
Do you guys have some of that information, like surrounding areas and water bills and?
Yeah, we can do that. I'll bring a summary when we make a presentation to the council later this month. I'll do that.
Helpful, gotta understand where everybody else is at around
Yep,
us.
right. I don't know where you're at, in fact, right now. What's the city's
Yeah.
water rates right now?
$4 1,000, and I don't know what the rest of that was.
There must be a big fixed fee.
Yeah, there's
on top of the
there are
$4.
probably SDCs and other things in that fee.
Yeah, but nobody pays SDCs relative to water rates. You know, SDCs will cover a
I thought-
lot of this.
Didn't Gresham, back in the day, Gresham, they were paying that on water rates and stuff like that. I mean, I saw it built right into their pricing structure.
An SDC component?
Yeah, it was like a constant revolving system development charge because they're
Nah,
constantly building and.
yeah, I don't know how they can do that to an existing customer. Only new customers pay SDCs and they'll get hit hard. You know, they'll get hit.
The laws may have changed since that was back in the early 90s.
These started in the early 90s. That's when the laws came into play for the SDCs. But I would expect your SDCs are going to end up being, $6,000, $8,000, maybe more dollars per new house that connects up.
Sure.
And we just updated the SDCs. I don't think it'll change dramatically, but I think water's not cheap. SDCs are pretty high.
Yeah.
And that offsets these costs. That money can be used for debt service. When you guys are putting multiple tens or hundreds of homes on your system a year, those offset these dollars. We don't have to borrow those dollars, or you can use it for debt service.
We could not call it a system development charge, but you'd have to have, just like any manufacturing operation, basically they're a manufacturing operation. You would have a fund that would offset, you'd have to have a fund built into the pricing structure that would offset, what they need to do to continuously upgrade and maintain the equipment they have. That's just a part of the price of the product,
I don't know if the state of Oregon allows anything like that, do they?
Oh, yeah, they do. In fact,
Yeah.
they all have it. There's there's maintenance. Of course, they budget maintenance every year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
operational
They cover that
funds
stuff.
versus capital
SDCs.
improvements.
And SDCs are used for that. So SDCs are eligible to do that, to replace equipment. So,
Yeah.
so that's new money though. New money coming in from a new house, that money can be used to replace equipment on the existing system.
Sure.
Looking from a already tapped in user, can you add in a maintenance component, a long-term maintenance?
Well, we do. That's in there. So I haven't looked at your budget specific, but I'm sure you have a line item for maintenance that Dawn has
I
to
meant
do.
to have somebody break down exactly how our water fees work, because I know, I think I paid like $43 this last month, but I know the water component was like $8 of it. But the rest of it are other fees. I want a breakdown of what exactly is being charged there.
That's available.
Yeah.
Well, do we have any other questions? Well, we got the experts in the house.
Interesting.
Procedurally, what do we need to do?
Well,
Do we need to vote? Do we need to?
I don't think so. I think
No.
our purpose is so you're aware of what we're going to go to the city council with.
Okay.
So, and then we've got a council meeting presentation later this month, and then the council will anticipate adopting it in October.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then we'll send it off to the state, get approval, And then the challenge is to find water losses and
Mhm.
find funding.
Well, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you.
Next up, we have our park code amendment update.
All right, yeah, I don't have anything formal prepared. I just, I missed last planning commission meeting and I wanted to make myself available to talk over any of the changes, the recent changes to the amendments. And actually, we haven't met. My name's Alan Wilson. I'm the planner. You're Ryan. Nice to meet you. Welcome to the commission. Cool. But yeah, so I provided you with a draft copy of the current version of the draft amendments. It's version 6. And also an email that I sent to city council, kind of explaining the last round of changes that were just made in the last week.
And this went to the city council and got voted down or tabled.
It got
or-
continued, yeah,
Continued.
so it got tabled. Yeah, went to council last Monday. There was some changes, there's some concerns with some of the elements. Those elements are 2 of the 3 issues that some counselors had have been addressed in these changes. And then they're gonna go back in front of council next Monday. And I've spoken with one of the counselors who had an issue with some of the elements, and he is on board with the changes. So we are optimistic that that phase 1 of the the Parkland Solutions plan will pass on Monday.
So your memo here looks like bullet point 1, parkland, the city accepts for dedication, would you be eligible for credit against parks SDCs?
That's
And
right.
there was some concern with that it was double dipping, if you will,
Exactly.
charging
Yeah.
them and then making them donate, right?
Right, yeah. So
So
there
I
was the code amendments previously, they removed the credit for SDCs. But that's been reinstated.
Okay.
Yep.
And then if it's all right with everybody, we can just bump through each of these.
Yeah, sure.
Only developments for which 1/4 acre or more of parkland is needed will be required to provide or offer parkland. And so that's just delineating the size of a subdivision.
Yep, basically the density of it.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And then the last one is the section pertaining to fees in lieu of parkland dedication has been removed.
And that just went away when the credit for STCs was reinstated, because basically the STCs will be the fee in lieu. If parkland isn't dedicated, you just pay the STCs.
Okay.
So that whole section just
That's
became
all.
irrelevant.
Previously established as far as the amount and everything else goes.
Mhm.
Okay. Any questions on that? I'm not seeing any questions. We don't have any audience left,
We
so.
don't, everyone left. I bored everyone.
This will get run back up to the city council and they'll
Yep.
vote on it from here.
Yep, that's
Okay.
it.
All right.
All right.
Sounds good. Those make sense. And I think that definitely clears up one of the questions that we had in our meeting as well. So
Great.
next up, we have public hearings, which we don't have any.
Anybody?
Public comment, doesn't appear that we have any. And commission comments. How about next meeting?
October, is it 16th? Let me confirm.
Third Wednesday?
Yep. You do have a hearing scheduled already. Yes, October 16th, same time, 2 p.m. You have a land partition,
Okay,
so.
well, nobody else has anything else. Let's meet on October 16th. Meeting adjourned.
There we go.